I always believed that my grandchildren and I had a special bond, the kind you read about in books and see on television, a grandmother's love. Oliver and Hazel filled the void left by Raymond's death. My husband passed away 5 years ago, a heart attack right in the garage where he was fixing his old Chevrolet. My children had long since grown up and moved on with their lives, and my grandchildren became my salvation. I'm Martha Ellington, 65 years old, a former nurse anesthetist. I worked at Ossipee General Hospital in New Hampshire for 37 years. It's not the warmest place, but the people there are tough and genuine, just like me. At least that's how I always thought. Finley and Paige live 15 minutes away from my house. When Oliver was born 9 years ago, they just couldn't cope. Finley threw himself into his work at the wind farms, constant business trips, overtime. Paige tried to be the perfect mother, but with her accounting job and constant worrying about every little thing. Anyway, I became their lifeline. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning, I picked Oliver up from daycare. Then Hazel was born, and my responsibilities doubled, but I was only too happy to help. I spent evenings with them when their parents were late at work and stayed overnight when Finley and Paige went out together. Gradually, my visits became daily. "Ba, tell me more about the hospital," Oliver would ask as I tucked him into bed. He wanted to be a doctor, so I told him stories from my practice, leaving out the scary details, of course. "Tell me about the princess," Hazel demanded, climbing onto my lap. And I made up stories about Princess Hazel, who saved the enchanted forest from evil trolls. On weekends, we baked cookies, my recipe with cinnamon and pecans. I taught my grandchildren how to fold paper boats and sail them down the creek in the park. We went to my favorite library, where I used to read fairy tales to their father. I showed them the constellations through Raymond's old telescope. Life had meaning again. Last November, Finley got a raise, and their financial situation improved. Paige cut back to part-time work. I thought we would spend even more time together, but I began to notice changes. At first, it was little things. Paige started dressing the children in different clothes after my visits, even though I always made sure they were warm. Then she started throwing out the food I brought and replacing it with organic and eco-friendly options. One day, I overheard her telling a friend on the phone, "Of course she loves the kids, but those outdated methods—" I didn't think much of it until that Tuesday, March 28th. It was a typical spring day, still cool but with a hint of warmth in the air. I arrived to pick up Oliver from school and Hazel from daycare as usual. Paige was waiting for us at home, which was unusual. She usually came home from work closer to 6. "Martha, we need to talk," she said as soon as I walked in the door. "Kids, go play upstairs." "But Grandma and I wanted to bake cupcakes," Hazel protested. "Later, sweetie. I need to talk to Grandma." Something in her voice made the children obey without further protest. Finley was sitting at the kitchen table, tapping his fingers nervously on the tabletop. He avoided my gaze. "Is something wrong?" I asked, sitting down across from him. I had a bad feeling about this. Paige took a seat next to her husband and placed her tablet in front of her as if it were some kind of evidence. "Finley and I have been reading a lot about modern approaches to parenting," she began in a businesslike tone, "and we've come to the conclusion that we need to rethink the role of grandparents in our children's lives." I blinked, not quite sure where she was going with this. "We appreciate your help, Mom," Finley interjected, finally looking up at me, "but we have a new parenting philosophy now." "A new philosophy?" I asked. Paige turned her tablet toward me. The screen was open to a blog titled Modern Parenting, Overcoming Generational Trauma. "According to recent studies," she said in a lecturing tone, "excessive influence from the older generation can interfere with the formation of healthy neural connections in children. You see, your generation grew up with different ideas about parenting, safety, and emotional intelligence." I felt the blood rush to my face. And what exactly about my interactions with my grandchildren is hindering their neural connections? Finley cleared his throat. "It's not you personally, Mom. We just want to take a consistent approach. And when children spend so much time with you, they get mixed signals." "Mixed signals," I repeated, feeling anger building inside me that I was trying hard to contain. "So my bedtime stories and cinnamon cookies are now harmful?" "Don't twist my words," Paige frowned. "We're talking about deeper things." Like you always solve problems for the kids instead of letting them figure things out for themselves. Or your stories about the hospital, Oliver has nightmares after you tell them. That's news to me, I said, looking at my son. Finley, he asks me to tell them. Mom, listen, he interrupted. Paige and I have been discussing this at length. We think it would be better if we slightly adjusted your involvement in the children's lives. Adjusted? Paige straightened up, clearly feeling her husband's support. We think 2 visits a month would be sufficient. On Sundays, from 2 to 5, under our supervision. And no sleepovers. It disrupts their sleep patterns. I looked at them, not believing my ears. 2 hours a month? After I had basically helped raise these children from birth? What do the children say about this? I asked, trying to remain calm. Children adapt, Paige snapped. That's why it's important to introduce the new rules as soon as possible, while their brains are still malleable. I looked at my son. The boy I had read books to, kissed when he skinned his knees, taught to ride a bike. Now he sat there like a stranger, completely on his wife's side. Is that all you have to say, Finley? I asked quietly. He sighed. Mom, you have to understand, this isn't against you. We just want to be good parents, to use modern methods based on science, not traditions. He said the last word as if it were something shameful. I've worked in medicine for 37 years, I remarked, and I've helped raise your children for the last 9 years. But of course, what do I know compared to a blog on the internet? See? Paige looked at her husband as if I had just confirmed all her fears. That's exactly the resistance to change Dr. Mortensen wrote about, a classic example of generational conflict. What are you talking about? I blurted out. Who's Dr. Mortensen? She's a leading expert on modern parenting, Paige said proudly. She has a PhD in developmental psychology and over 1 million followers on social media. I felt the conversation was going nowhere. Whatever I said, they had already decided everything for me, for the children, for all of us. Can I at least say goodbye to Oliver and Hazel? I asked, getting up. Paige and Finley exchanged glances. Of course, Paige agreed reluctantly. Just no drama, please. Don't tell them we're kicking you out or anything like that. I would never use children, I replied coldly, unlike some people. I went upstairs. The children were playing in Oliver's room. He was building something with his building blocks, and Hazel was directing the process, as befits a feisty little sister. Grandma! Hazel exclaimed when she saw me. Can we bake cupcakes now? I sat down on the edge of the bed and patted the space next to me. Come here, you sweethearts. They settled down on either side of me, and I hugged them, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo and something else, something familiar. There won't be any cupcakes today, I said. Grandma has to go away for a while. Are you sick? Oliver asked, alarmed. He had always been a sensitive boy. No, sweetheart. It's just that grown-ups sometimes have things to do. But I want you to know that I will always love you, no matter what happens. When will you be back? Hazel asked insistently. I looked into her serious eyes, just like Finley's when he was a child. Soon, I lied. In the meantime, listen to your mom and dad, and don't forget to feed the fish. We got an aquarium last summer. Oliver wanted a dog, but Paige was adamantly against having animals in the house. The fish were a compromise. I won't forget, Oliver promised. I wrote it down in my diary, just like you taught me. Feed them twice a day, change 1/3 of the water every Sunday. Good boy. I hugged them tightly one last time, fighting back tears. As I descended the stairs, I already knew that the decision had been made. Not by them, but by me. I wasn't going to fight for a place in my own grandchildren's lives, beg for permission to see them, or listen to lectures about how I was doing everything wrong. 37 years in medicine had taught me one thing. Sometimes you have to let go to preserve your dignity. Paige was waiting at the door with a tense smile. So, you understand our position, right? It's not forever, just until the kids adjust to the new system. I understand, I replied. Much better than you think. Great. Then I'll see you in 2 weeks on Sunday? From 2 to 5 as agreed. I looked at her for a long time. No, Paige, I won't be seeing you. What? She blinked. But we agreed. You've decided that I'm no longer needed in my grandchildren's lives. that my presence is harmful to their development, that my love and care are a relic of the past. I accept your decision." "Martha, you've got it all wrong," she exclaimed. "We just want to set healthy boundaries." "The boundaries are already set," I said, putting on my coat and grabbing my bag. "Tell Finley I don't hold a grudge against him. It's his choice to support your new philosophy, but I'm too old to play by someone else's rules." I left the house without looking back. In the car, clenching the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, I finally allowed myself to cry. But these weren't tears of grief or self-pity. They were tears of liberation. I had lived too long for others, for my husband, my children, my grandchildren. Maybe it was time to live for myself. The first thing I did when I got home was call my oldest friend, Noemi. "What did they do?" she exclaimed after hearing my story. "Your daughter-in-law has always been eccentric, but this is too much." "It's not just her," I sighed. "Finley supported her. My own son." "What are you going to do now?" I looked out the window at the snow-covered tops of the pine trees. Somewhere out there, a new life was beginning. A life without 3 o'clock calls asking me to come over because Hazel had a fever, without trips to Oliver's school for parent-teacher conferences when Finley and Paige were too busy. No more kids' drawings on the fridge or little hands in mine. "I'll go on," I said. "What else is there?" Before I went to bed, I sent Finley a quick message. "I respect your decision and won't get involved. Tell the kids Grandma loves them." He didn't reply. That night, for the first time in many years, I slept without an alarm clock. No one was waiting for me to arrive at 7 in the morning to take the children to school. No one was counting on my pancakes for breakfast or bedtime stories. There was emptiness ahead, but in that emptiness lay freedom. I felt like a patient after a difficult operation, exhausted, drained, but hopeful for recovery. In the morning, I deleted the reminders about Oliver's school events and Hazel's dance classes from my phone. I turned off the notifications on our family chat, and I started making a list of things I had put off for later. The things I never got around to doing while I was torn between my life and the lives of my son's children. The first item on the list was learn to live without them. The most difficult task I had ever undertaken. The first few days dragged on endlessly. I woke up at 5:30 out of habit, reached for my phone to check my messages, and then remembered there was nowhere to rush to. No one was waiting for breakfast. No one needed a ride to school. The house was unusually quiet, and the silence rang in my ears. At first, I tried to keep myself busy with cleaning. I went through all the closets, sorted old photos into albums, and washed the windows. The house sparkled with cleanliness, but I didn't feel any better. I sat in a rocking chair for hours, looking out the window at the neighbor's yard, where a little girl was riding a bike. She looked a little like Hazel, the same light hair braided into pigtails. "Stop torturing yourself," Nomi said when she came over on the 4th day of my self-imposed exile. "They'll regret their decision." "That's not the point," I replied, pouring tea. "I just don't know how to fill my days now." Noemi, with her flower shop and 3 grandchildren who regularly stayed with her on weekends, couldn't fully understand my loneliness, but she sincerely tried to help. "Come with me to the pool tomorrow," she suggested. "We have a group for women our age, gentle aerobics in the water, very good for the joints, and for the blues, too." I wanted to refuse, but my gaze fell on a child's drawing pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet, the last one Hazel had drawn for me. Little people with sticks for arms and legs, Grandma, Mom, Dad, me, and Ollie. A small family where I was now the odd one out. "Okay," I agreed. "I'll pick you up at 9. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in a bright room like a hospital corridor trying to find the exit. Doors opened one after another, but behind them were empty wards. Only behind the last one were Oliver and Hazel. They were shouting something to me, but I couldn't hear them. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. There were 2 missed calls from Finley on my phone. He had called at 2 in the morning. He didn't leave a message. I almost dialed his number, but stopped myself. If it was something urgent, he would call back. If not, it was better not to cross the boundaries they had so clearly set. The pool turned out to be a good idea. The warm water enveloped my body, washing away my anxiety along with the sweat and fatigue. The instructor, a cheerful woman in her 40s, showed us some simple exercises, which we repeated to the rhythm of the music. There were about 15 women in the group, most of them around my age. "I'm Deborah," said a plump woman with short hair as we were changing in the locker room. "Are you new here?" "Martha," I replied. "Yes, a friend brought me." "That's good. After my divorce, I didn't leave the house for 3 months until my daughter dragged me here. I've been coming here for 2 years now." There was something encouraging about her words. If she could cope with a divorce, then I could somehow survive being separated from my grandchildren. At least I would try. At home, I found a message from Oliver. He had recently got his first phone and was sometimes texting me in secret. "Hi, Grandma. When are you coming? Mom said you're busy, but it's been a whole week." My heart sank. What should I say? Lie and say I was really busy? Tell the truth, that his parents had decided to shield him from my influence? Or just ignore it and pretend I hadn't received the message? In the end, I wrote, "Hello, dear. Grandma is very busy. How are your fish? Don't forget to feed them." The reply came instantly. "Everything's fine. Dad helped me change the filter. When are you coming?" I put my phone down. I needed advice, so I decided to call Greta. My daughter lived in Minnesota, worked as a pharmacist, and visited us every 6 months. She didn't have children. She and her husband had consciously chosen a childless life, focusing on their careers and traveling. "Mom, is something wrong?" Her voice sounded worried. I rarely called on weekdays. I told her the whole situation, trying to sound neutral, without emotion. But my voice still faltered when I got to the part about the new parenting philosophy. "Those bastards," Greta cursed. She had always been outspoken. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Oliver wrote and asked when I'm coming. I don't want to lie to him, but I can't tell him the truth either." Greta was silent for a moment, thinking about the situation. "You know, Mom, I think it's better if you don't get involved." "What?" "Listen, I know how much you love those kids, but Finley and Paige are their parents. If you start talking to Oliver behind their backs, it will only make the conflict worse. And in the end, the children will suffer." I knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier. What am I supposed to do? Just disappear from their lives? "Give them time," Greta said gently. "Paige is playing the progressive mother, but reality will catch up with her soon. Raising 2 children, working, and running a household is no joke, especially with a girl as determined as Hazel. Remember how she flooded the bathroom last year?" I couldn't help but smile. Hazel had decided to create an ocean for her dolls and turn the water on full blast, forgetting to put the plug in. When we found her, water was already seeping through the ceiling on the first floor. I remember that. Paige was hysterical. Exactly. How many more stories like that will there be? Believe me, they'll need their grandmother again very soon. In the meantime, live your life, Mom. You deserve it. After talking to Greta, I sat on the porch for a long time, wrapped in a blanket. The April evening was cool, but the fresh air helped clear my thoughts. I watched my neighbor across the street, Dorian Winters, fiddle with his old lawnmower. We said hello when we saw each other, but we weren't close, even though we had lived across the street from each other for over 10 years. Dorian had been widowed around the same time as me. His wife Eleanor had died of cancer 3 years ago. I used to see them together often. They would work in their garden or go for walks in the evenings, holding hands. After her death, Dorian withdrew into himself and rarely left the house. But in recent months, something had changed. He had started tending to his garden again and had even painted the fence. He looked up and noticed me on the porch. He waved, and I waved back. The next morning, I woke up with a new resolve. Greta was right. I needed to live my life. I took a box of yarn and knitting needles from the attic. I used to love knitting, but I gave up the hobby when my grandchildren were born. Now I had enough time to return to my old hobby. Knitting was calming. The steady movement of the needles, row after row, was like a heartbeat. I started with a simple scarf, then moved on to a more complicated pattern for a vest. I checked my phone from time to time, but there were no new messages from Oliver. His parents must have noticed our correspondence. On Thursday, Nomi dragged me to a book club meeting at the library. 10 women were discussing some contemporary novel about complicated family relationships. I hadn't read the book, but they welcomed me anyway. "Next time we're discussing Little Women," said Louise, the librarian, "a timeless classic. Join us, Martha." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I'd be back. It seemed strange to discuss fictional family dramas when my own was unfolding without my participation. On my way home, I noticed Dorian trying to fix the mailbox. The wooden stand was crooked, and he was trying unsuccessfully to straighten it. "Need some help?" I asked, stopping at his house. He turned around, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That would be great. This damn thing won't stand up straight." I walked closer and examined the structure. The ground is frozen and thawed unevenly. You need to dig under one side. "Are you into gardening?" he asked, surprised. "My husband was a handyman," I smiled. "I picked up a few things." Together, we leveled the stand by digging under the south side and placing a stone underneath for stability. The work took about 20 minutes, but it was a pleasant, meaningful activity. "Thanks for your help," Dorian said when we were done. "Would you like some tea? I have some blueberry pie from the bakery." I wanted to decline. I had an unfinished vest and an empty house waiting for me. But something in his eyes, the fatigue and loneliness so similar to my own, made me agree. Dorian's house was typical of our neighborhood. 2 stories with a porch and a small garden. Inside, everything was perfectly tidy, but you could sense that a lonely man lived there. Minimal decorations, practical furniture, a television as the centerpiece of the living room. "Have a seat," he said, pointing to the kitchen table. "Tea or coffee?" "Tea, please." While he fiddled with the kettle, I looked at the photos on the wall. Dorian in a railroad uniform with some kind of large mechanism. Dorian and Eleanor in front of the Grand Canyon. Dorian with 2 adult men who looked very much like him, obviously his sons. "Are they your children?" I asked when he placed the cup in front of me. "Yes, Michael and James. One is in Seattle, the other in Austin. They come home for Christmas and Thanksgiving, weather permitting." "Do you have any grandchildren?" He shook his head. "Not yet. Michael just got married, but he and Rachel are focused on their careers. And James, he has his own issues." Something in his tone told me not to ask any further. Instead, I asked about his work. 32 years at the railroad depot," he said proudly. "I retired 5 years ago. I was the chief mechanic, responsible for repairing locomotives." "Sounds interesting." "All sorts of things happened. What did you do before you retired?" "I was a nurse anesthetist at the city hospital, 37 years in the same place." We got talking. It turned out we had a lot in common. We both loved old movies, classical music, and walking. He had also lost his wife and sometimes felt out of place in a rapidly changing world. To my surprise, time flew by. When I looked at my watch, it was almost 6 in the evening. "I have to go," I said, getting up. "Thank you for the tea and the conversation." "Thank you for helping me with the mailbox," he smiled. "And for the company. It was nice." On the porch, he suddenly stopped me. "Martha, I've been thinking, would you like to have dinner together sometime? There's a new Italian restaurant in town that's supposed to be pretty good." I froze. Was this a date? At 65? After so many years of widowhood? "Just as neighbors," he quickly added, noticing my confusion. "Sometimes it's good to get out of the house." "I'll think about it," I replied. "Thanks for the invitation." When I got home, I checked my phone first. One message from Nomi asking if we were going to the pool tomorrow, and one from Finley. "Mom, you're not answering your calls. Paige and I want to discuss the visit schedule. Please call back." So they had decided to stick with their plan after all. 2 hours a month, under their supervision. As if I were some kind of dangerous person, not the grandmother who had changed their diapers and taught them to walk. I put my phone down without responding. I didn't have the energy for that conversation today. Instead, I went back to my knitting and put on an old Frank Sinatra album, one of Raymond's favorites. The music filled the house, chasing away the silence and loneliness. The day after the pool, I stopped by the bookstore and bought Little Women. I decided to join the book club after all. As I left the store, I literally bumped into Dorian. "Martha!" He looked surprised. "What a coincidence." "Are you following me?" I joked. "No, of course not," he said, blushing slightly. "I just stopped by to buy a new detective novel. I have a whole collection." We walked to the parking lot together, discussing books and movies. There was something elusively pleasant about it, just chatting with someone my age, without having to watch every word I said, like with Paige, or constantly being distracted by the kids' needs. "About dinner," he said when we reached my car. "The offer still stands." I looked at this tall, gray-haired man with kind eyes and smile lines. What was I losing? "Okay," I agreed. "When? Maybe Saturday? At 7 in the evening? It's a date." That evening, I received a message from Oliver. "Grandma, why don't you come over anymore? Mom says you're mad at us." I felt my heart sink. So they had presented the situation as if I was the one who was upset and had stopped coming? Typical manipulation, shifting the blame onto someone else. After much thought, I replied, "I would never be upset with you or Hazel. It's just that adults sometimes can't agree on things. But I will always love you, no matter what happens." There was no reply. Maybe Paige had checked his phone and seen our conversation. Or maybe Oliver had just gone to bed. It was almost 9 o'clock. I called Greta to tell her about Oliver's message and invite her to come over for a couple of days. "Mom, I'd love to, but we're really busy at work," she sighed. "Maybe in a month? And about Oliver, stick to your guns. Don't interfere in their parenting, but don't cut off contact with the kids completely. It's a fine line, I know." "What do you think about—" I faltered, not knowing how to phrase it. "I think I have a date on Saturday." "A date?" Her voice sounded surprised. "With whom?" "With my neighbor, Dorian Winters. He's lived across the street from us all this time. We got talking and he asked me out to dinner." There was a pause. "That's great, Mom," Greta finally said. "It's about time you got out of the house and made some new friends." "I'm 65, I reminded her. "What friends are you talking about?" "Age is just a number," she laughed. "Aunt Lois got married at 70 and she's fine." She enjoyed life until the very end. After talking to Greta, I couldn't sleep for a long time. My thoughts jumped from worrying about my grandchildren to the upcoming dinner with Dorian. Was I ready for a new relationship? Was I betraying Raymond's memory? And what would the children say if they found out? My daughter advises me not to get involved, but my heart breaks every time I see a message from Oliver. Maybe Greta is right, and I really should focus on myself, on new hobbies, new acquaintances, on Dorian. Who knows? Maybe this unexpected encounter is a chance to start a new chapter in my life, a life without constant phone calls and worries, a life for myself. A month has passed, a whole month without Hazel calling to ask me to tell her a bedtime story, without Oliver asking me how the heart works or why the sky is blue, without school concerts and parent-teacher conferences. I was learning to live differently. My days took on a new rhythm. In the mornings, I went swimming with Noemi and the other women who had gradually become my friends. After lunch, I went to book club or knitted. I usually spent my evenings with Dorian. We watched old movies, listened to music, or just talked on his porch while watching the sunset. Sometimes we went out on the town, dinner at a restaurant or a concert by the local symphony orchestra. Finley called twice. The first time I didn't answer. The second time I forced myself to pick up the phone, but the conversation was awkward and disjointed. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked. "We're worried." "Everything's fine," I replied dryly. "How are the kids?" "They're fine. Listen, Paige and I were thinking, maybe you should come on Sunday after all. The kids miss you." "They miss me?" I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. "Have you explained to them why Grandma isn't coming every day anymore?" Silence on the line. Then, "Mom, you've got it all wrong. We just wanted—" "No, Finley, you've got it all wrong. I'm not a toy you can put in a closet and take out when you feel like it. I'm a human being with feelings. Mom, tell the kids I love them. Bye." I hung up, feeling my heart pounding in my throat. In the past, I would have been upset, maybe even cried. But something had changed in me over the past month. I had developed a strength that I hadn't had before. Or maybe it had always been there, but I had forgotten about it, lost in the needs of others. 2 days later, Paige sent a message. "Hazel wants to know when you're coming over to bake cinnamon cookies." I didn't reply. Another day later, a photo arrived, Oliver with some kind of medal. The caption read, "Won the school science fair." I sent my congratulations, but nothing more. It was a strange game of silence. They were waiting for me to give in, to come running at their first call. But I held on, and with each passing day, it became a little easier. "You've changed," Dorian remarked as we walked through the park. May was warm, and the trees were covered with delicate green leaves. "Really?" I turned to him. "In what way?" "I don't know how to explain it." He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "When we first started talking, there was something broken about you, but now you seem more upright, more confident." I smiled and took his hand. This was another new element in my life: touch. After Raymond's death, I hardly touched other adults, only children. Hugs from my grandchildren, kisses on the top of their heads, holding hands when crossing the street. But touching a man, a person my own age, it was an almost forgotten sensation. "You know," I said, "I think I just remembered who I am. Not just a grandmother, not just a mother, just Martha." Dorian squeezed my hand lightly. "I like just Martha." That evening, we kissed for the first time. Not a fleeting touch of lips as we said goodbye, but a long, conscious kiss. And I felt neither shame nor guilt toward Raymond's memory. On the contrary, I had the feeling that he was smiling somewhere, happy that I wasn't dwelling on the past. The following week, what I had both feared and hoped for happened. I ran into them at the supermarket. I was picking out tomatoes. Dorian had promised to make his signature tomato soup when I heard an excited cry, "Grandma!" I turned around and saw Hazel rushing toward me between the vegetable shelves. Behind her, more reserved, but with an equally joyful expression, was Oliver. And behind them, pushing a shopping cart, stood Paige, looking completely confused. Hazel crashed into me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Grandma, Grandma, I missed you so much. Why didn't you come? I learned to tie my shoelaces by myself, and I lost a tooth. Look." She smiled widely, showing the gap where her front tooth used to be. I knelt down and hugged her. "You're so clever, and you've grown so tall." Oliver approached more sedately, but he couldn't resist hugging me as soon as I straightened up. "Hi, Grandma," he said. "I won a medal at the Olympics." "I saw the photo," I smiled. "I'm very proud of you." By this point, Paige had overcome her embarrassment and approached us. She looked exhausted. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and her clothes were wrinkled. She was nothing like the flawless young woman who had lectured me about neural connections a month ago. "Hello, Martha," she said, smiling stiffly. "What a surprise." "Hello, Paige," I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "How are you?" "Fine," she replied too quickly. "Everything's fine, just a little hectic." It was the end of the school year, and the kids had a lot of activities. Finley had an important project at work and was often late. "I understand," I said, not offering to help. "Grandma, come with us," Hazel exclaimed, tugging at my arm. "We're baking cookies, and we're going to play school. I'll be the teacher. And you can see my new project," added Oliver. "I'm making a model of the solar system for school." I looked at Paige. She looked as if she was about to cry with relief at the thought that I could take the children away for at least a few hours. "I have other plans today," I said gently but firmly, "but I was very happy to see you." "But Grandma," Hazel began. "Hazel, don't bother Grandma," Paige interrupted, her voice sounding desperate. "She has her own life." "What life?" Hazel asked indignantly with childlike directness. "She's your grandmother." I couldn't help smiling. Something like shame flashed across Paige's eyes. "Martha, maybe we could talk?" she asked, lowering her voice. "Alone?" "Of course," I agreed. "But not today. I really have plans." "What plans?" Oliver asked curiously. "I'm having dinner with a friend," I replied simply. "What kind of friend?" he persisted. "My neighbor, Mr. Winters. He lives across the street." "The old man with white hair?" Hazel wrinkled her nose. "Is he your boyfriend?" Paige gasped. "Hazel, that's inappropriate." "Why?" The girl didn't understand. "Jessie's mom and dad got divorced, and now she has a boyfriend named Paul. He takes her to Disneyland." The situation was becoming increasingly awkward. I decided it was time to end this chance encounter. Dorian is just a friend, I said, although that was no longer entirely true. And I have to go, but I was very happy to see you. I hugged both children, nodded to Paige, and headed for the ticket office, feeling their eyes on my back. It was a strange feeling, a mixture of guilt, relief, and some kind of grim satisfaction. They had seen that I was alive, healthy, and quite capable of managing without them, and judging by the look on Paige's face, it had been an unpleasant surprise for her. At home, I told Dorian everything while he was making soup. "How do you feel?" he asked, stirring the thick red liquid in the pot. "I don't know," I admitted. "On the one hand, I miss the kids. On the other, there was something very liberating about just walking away, not rushing to solve their problems, not offering to help." Dorian nodded. Sometimes people need to lose something to appreciate what they had. That evening, after dinner, a message came from Paige. "Martha, the kids can't settle down after seeing you. They miss you very much. Maybe you could find time to stop by?" I showed the message to Dorian. What should I say? He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "What do you want?" I wondered. Of course, I miss my grandchildren. But did I want to go back to the old pattern of being used and then pushed aside as soon as I became inconvenient? "I want to see the children," I said finally, "but on my terms." I replied, "We can discuss it in person. I'm free Thursday afternoon." Paige responded immediately. "Great, maybe you could come over to our place. The kids would love to see you." "No," I wrote. "Let's meet at Margie's Cafe at 3 o'clock, just you and me." She seemed hesitant. There was a pause in our correspondence for several minutes. Finally, "Okay, see you Thursday." "That's bold," Dorian commented when I showed him our exchange. "I just don't want the kids to hear us talking," I explained, "and I don't want Paige to think she can use them to manipulate me." On Thursday, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. I ordered tea and sat watching people pass by the window. It was strange to realize that a year ago at this time, I would most likely have been picking up Hazel from kindergarten or helping Oliver with his homework. And now I was sitting here, free, with my hair grown out and dyed a new color. Nomi had convinced me to try a warmer shade of brown, wearing a new dress, waiting for my daughter-in-law to discuss the terms of my return to my grandchildren's lives. Paige arrived at 3 o'clock sharp, out of breath and excited. She was wearing a strict office suit. Apparently she had come straight from work. "Sorry, am I late?" she asked, sitting down opposite me. "No, I came early," I replied. "How are you?" She took a deep breath, as if gathering her thoughts. "Honestly, not great. Finley's hardly ever home. This new project is taking up all his time. Hazel is completely out of control. Yesterday she threw a tantrum in the store because I wouldn't buy her a doll. And Oliver, he's withdrawn. He hardly talks to me, only to his father, and even then only rarely." I listened silently, not interrupting. Let her get it off her chest. "And then there's that damn Dr. Mortensen," she continued with unexpected anger. "You know what I found out? She doesn't have a doctorate. It's just a pseudonym for some fitness blogger from California. And I thought—" She stopped, apparently realizing she was saying too much. "Anyway, I'm really sorry, Martha. I made a mistake." There it was, the admission I had been waiting for. But strangely, I felt no triumph or satisfaction, only exhaustion and a quiet sadness. "Paige," I said gently, "I don't hold it against you. Really. You and Finley are the parents. You get to decide how to raise your children." "But we were wrong," she said, looking at me desperately. "This new philosophy, it was stupid. She stumbled. "I was just afraid I wasn't up to it, that I was a bad mother. You do everything so easily, so naturally. The children adore you. And I thought, maybe if I limited your influence, they would start to feel the same way about me?" I blinked, trying to process what I had heard. Was this just a case of ordinary jealousy? A young mother afraid that her children love their grandmother more? "Paige, they love you," I said. "You're their mother. That's a very special bond. But they're always so happy when you come," her voice faltered, "and so upset when you leave. Because they can do things with their grandmother that they can't do with their parents." I smiled. "Grandma spoils them, lets them break the rules, gives them sweets before dinner. Of course the kids love that. But that doesn't mean they love you any less." She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I'm so tired, Martha. I feel like I'm falling apart. And Finley, he tries to help, but he has enough problems of his own. I remembered how I felt the same way when Finley was little, how it seemed like the whole world was demanding more from me than I could give, and how important it was to have the support of my mother-in-law, who came once a week, took the child, and gave me a few hours of peace and quiet. I understand, I said. I really do, and I'm willing to help with the children, but not like before. What do you mean? She asked, tensing up. I won't come every day. I have my own life now, my own activities, but I can take the children on weekends once a week, from Friday evening to Sunday. That will give you and Finley some time to yourselves. The whole weekend? Hope lit up in her eyes. Yes, but there are conditions. I straightened up. No more talk about my methods being outdated or harmful to the children. No restrictions on what we do while they're with me. Within reason, of course. And no checking in every hour to see if everything's okay. Paige bit her lip, considering the offer. And one more thing, I added. I need an apology from Finley. In person. Not over the phone. An apology? Yes. He let you talk to me as if I were some kind of obstacle in his children's lives. As if everything I've done for you, for them, means nothing. She lowered her eyes. You're right, he owes you an apology. I'll tell him. Okay, I nodded. Then I guess we have a deal. So you'll be back? There was so much hope in her voice that I almost felt sorry for her. Yes, Paige, but not like before. Things will be different now. We talked a little more about the kids and what had happened over the past month. It turned out that Oliver had decided to participate in the science fair with his model of the solar system. And Hazel had signed up for ballet lessons, but after the first class she said it was boring and now wanted to do karate. When we said goodbye at the cafe exit, Paige suddenly hugged me, awkwardly but sincerely. Thank you, Martha, she whispered. We missed you very much. I missed you too, I replied, and it was true. At home, Dorian was waiting for me with a bouquet of wildflowers. He often brought them to me, knowing how much I loved simple daisies and bluebells. How did it go? He asked, helping me take off my coat. Fine, I smiled. We've agreed. I'll take the kids on weekends. Is that what you want? Yes, I nodded, but things will be different now. I won't disappear from their lives and forget about my own anymore. He hugged me, and I pressed myself against him, breathing in the familiar scent, a mixture of aftershave and something elusive, something Dorian. You know, he said quietly, I'm glad you made up with your family, but I'm also glad you're not forgetting about yourself. About myself? I looked up, meeting his gaze. Or about us? He smiled, and the corners of his eyes crinkled, the same ones I had grown to love so much over the past few weeks. About us, too. He stayed at my place that night. We hadn't planned it, it just happened. We stayed up late discussing my conversation with Paige, then watched an old Cary Grant movie, and when it was time to say goodbye, neither of us wanted to leave. In the morning, when I woke up next to him, I thought that life was an amazing thing. A month ago, I was desperate, feeling useless, thrown overboard. And today, I woke up with a smile, next to a man who appreciates me for who I am. In the evening, Finley called. Mom? His voice sounded uncertain. Can I come over? Talk? Of course, I said. I'll be home. He arrived an hour later, alone, without Paige and the kids. He stood in the doorway, shifting from foot to foot, like he did when he was a kid and broke a window with a ball or got a bad grade in school. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. Can I come in? I stepped aside silently, letting him in. He walked into the living room and stopped, looking around as if he were seeing the room for the first time. Did you change something here? I moved the furniture around, I shrugged, and I bought new curtains. Nice, he nodded. Your new hairstyle looks good on you. I waited without helping him, let him find the words himself. Mom, he finally managed. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Paige and we were both wrong. I looked at my son, a tall, strong man who now looked like a little boy who had done something wrong and was waiting to be punished. I know words won't fix anything, he he continued, "but I'm truly sorry. I should have protected you. I should have stood up for you instead. Instead, you let your wife throw me out," I finished for him, as if all these years, everything I've done for your children meant nothing. He lowered his head. "I know. It's unforgivable." "No, Finley." I moved closer. "It's forgivable, because I'm your mother, and I'll always love you, no matter what you do, but I won't let you treat me like I'm insignificant anymore." "I understand." He looked up, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Paige said you agreed on weekends." "Yes, but you'll have to explain to the children why Grandma is only coming on weekends now, and don't you dare blame it on me." "I won't." He shook his head. "I'll explain everything to them, honestly." We talked a little more, about his work, the kids, how the month had gone. I didn't mention Dorian. That was a conversation for another time. When he left, he hugged me tightly, like he used to when he was a child. "I love you, Mom," he whispered. "I'm sorry I forgot to show it." "I love you too, son," I replied, feeling something heavy lift from my heart. I always have and always will. On the porch, already opening the car door, he suddenly turned around. "By the way, Mom, who was that man who came in when I pulled up? The tall one with gray hair." I smiled. "That's Dorian, my neighbor." "Just a neighbor?" Finley raised an eyebrow. "For now," I replied. "We'll see." He paused, thinking about what he had heard, then nodded. "All right. If he makes you happy, I'm glad." When his car disappeared around the corner, I went back into the house, feeling strangely relieved. My phone was flashing with a new message. It was Paige. "Thanks, Martha, for everything. The kids can't wait for Friday." I smiled and replied, "Me too." Then I dialed Dorian's number. I had plans for the evening, and they definitely didn't include thinking about my sister-in-law and her problems. It was mid-June. Almost 2 months had passed since the day Paige and Finley decided to shield the children from my bad influence. In recent weeks, we had found some kind of precarious balance. I picked up my grandchildren on weekends, as agreed. From Friday evening to Sunday, they were all mine, and we enjoyed every minute together. Oliver continued to work on his model of the solar system. I helped him color the planets and explain distances and orbits. The boy absorbed the information like a sponge. And Hazel, contrary to my fears, didn't give up karate. On the contrary, she now ran around the house in a white kimono, trying to repeat the moves her coach had shown her. Dorian and I became almost inseparable. He officially introduced himself to my children, and to my surprise, they took our relationship in stride. Finley was a little tense at first, but he quickly warmed up when he realized that Dorian wasn't going to steal his mother. And Greta, who came to visit for a week, instantly hit it off with him. They could talk for hours about jazz records and old movies. Life gradually settled down, turning into something new, unfamiliar, but surprisingly pleasant. And yet, at times, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the calm before the storm. Something about Paige's behavior alarmed me. She became even more jumpy than before. When I brought the children over on Friday, she looked exhausted. And when I picked them up on Sunday, she asked strange questions about how I managed to cope with Hazel when she threw tantrums, or what I fed Oliver, who refused to eat vegetables at home. I answered as neutrally as possible, not trying to teach her how to be a mother. But I could see the despair in her eyes, which she tried to hide behind a forced smile. Finley also looked tired, although he was trying to keep it together. He had been promoted at work and was now often away on business trips, leaving Paige alone with the children. That evening, I went to bed earlier than usual. It had been a busy day, swimming in the morning, then Dorian and I went to an antique fair in a neighboring town, and in the evening, he cooked dinner. After all these months of loneliness, it was unusual and surprisingly pleasant to fall asleep next to someone, feeling the warmth of another person, hearing their breathing. I was almost asleep when the phone on the bedside table rang with a shrill trill. The clock showed 11:45. "Who could it be so late?" Dorian muttered, turning over. I fumbled for the phone, squinting at the bright screen. It was Paige. Alarming scenarios flashed through my mind. An accident, the hospital. Something had happened to the children. "Hello?" I tried to sound calm, but my heart was already pounding in my throat. "Martha?" Paige's voice sounded strange, as if she was having trouble speaking. "Martha, I'm sorry to call so late." I sat up in bed and turned on the nightlight. Dorian woke up too, looking at me with concern. "What's wrong, Paige? Are the kids okay?" "Yes," she sobbed. No, physically they're fine. They're asleep." "Then what's the matter?" I felt relieved, but also annoyed. Calling at midnight to say everything was fine? "I can't cope, Martha." Her voice broke into sobs. I can't do this anymore. Hazel threw such a tantrum in the store today that the security guard came over to ask if we needed help. Oliver has been refusing to do his homework for 3 days. Finley is out of town until Wednesday. I haven't slept properly in a week. I listened to her crying into the phone and felt a strange mixture of emotions: sympathy, exhaustion, and a kind of grim satisfaction. This is it, I thought. This is what Greta was talking about. Reality is catching up with her. "Paige, calm down," I said gently. "Take a deep breath. Everything will be fine." "No, it won't," she sobbed again. "Nothing will be fine. I'm a terrible mother. I thought I could control everything, do everything right. I read all those damn books, blogs. But in reality, I can't even get a 6-year-old to put on socks without a fight." Dorian signaled that he was leaving so we could talk alone. I nodded gratefully. "Being a parent isn't easy," I said when he left. "Believe me, there have been times when I've felt like a complete failure." "Really?" Her voice sounded incredulous. "But you're always so together. Your kids are like angels around you." I smiled involuntarily. "Angels? Did you see how Hazel broke my favorite vase last week? Or how Oliver tried to hide spinach in his pockets, thinking I wouldn't notice? But you didn't yell at them." "I didn't lose my temper." Her voice faltered. "But today I yelled at Hazel so much that I scared myself. She looked at me like I was some kind of monster." "All parents lose their temper sometimes," I said. "It doesn't make you a bad mother." "Yes, it does," she sighed. "I've ruined everything, Martha. This new philosophy of mine, it was so stupid. I thought I knew better than anyone else how to raise children. But really, I was just afraid that I couldn't do it. And instead of admitting that and asking for help, I pushed away the only person who could offer it." There was such sincere remorse in her voice that my heart skipped a beat. I remembered myself at her age, a young mother trying to do everything perfectly, afraid to show weakness. "Paige," I said gently, "why are you calling now? What do you want?" There was a pause. I could hear her breathing heavily, as if she were gathering strength for something difficult. "I want to ask you for help," she finally said. "I need your help, Martha. I can't do this alone." "What kind of help do you need?" "I don't know." She started crying again. "Maybe you could come over more than just on weekends? Pick up Hazel from daycare? Help Oliver with his homework? Like you used to?" I closed my eyes. This was it. What I had been waiting for, and dreading at the same time. A return to the old pattern, when they needed me every day, when I dissolved into their lives and forgot about my own. "Paige," I said, trying to keep my voice firm but not cold, "I'm willing to help you, but not like before." "What do you mean?" Her voice sounded alarmed. "I mean I have my own life now, my own plans, my own commitments. I can't just drop everything and come running at the first call like I used to." "But the children will be fine," I interrupted. "I love them with all my heart, you know that. And I'll help as much as I can, but on certain conditions." "What conditions?" She wasn't crying anymore, and her voice sounded wary. "First, no more talk about my methods being outdated or harmful to the children. No more lectures from internet experts on how I should raise my own grandchildren." "Yes, of course," she quickly agreed. "I'll never—" "Second," I continued, "we'll draw up a clear schedule, the days and times when I can help, and you'll stick to it. No sudden calls like, 'I have to leave urgently, pick up the kids,' except in real emergencies, of course." "Okay." Her voice sounded much calmer now. "That's reasonable." "And third," I took a deep breath, "I need you to understand that I'm not going to sacrifice my life for your convenience anymore. I love you all, but I deserve happiness and respect too. There was a long pause. All I could hear was her breathing on the line and for some reason the ticking of the clock on the wall. Tick-tock, tick-tock, as if counting down the seconds until her decision. "I understand," she finally said quietly, "and I agree to all your conditions." Good. I felt the tension in my shoulders ease a little. Then let's meet tomorrow and discuss everything. In person, not over the phone. Tomorrow, yes. Her voice sounded almost normal. Maybe over lunch. I can take a break from work. It's a deal. 1 o'clock at the same cafe where we met last time. Martha, she hesitated. Thank you. Really. I know I don't deserve your help after everything I said, but I'm very grateful. You're welcome, Paige, I replied. Now go to bed. Tomorrow is a new day. When I hung up, Dorian quietly returned to the bedroom. Everything okay? He asked, sitting down on the edge of the bed. Yes, I nodded. Just family stuff. Something serious? I wondered. Was it serious? Or was it just the natural course of things, a young mother realizing she needed help and asking for it? It's not that serious, I replied. It's just that Paige finally admitted she needs my help with the kids. And you agreed? He looked at me intently, not judgmental, just curious. Yes, but on my terms. I'm not going to be at their beck and call like I used to be. He smiled, taking my hand. I'm glad. You deserve respect, Martha. And it's good that they finally understand that. I'm not sure they understand, I sighed. It's more like they have nowhere else to go, but it's progress. Great progress. He squeezed my hand lightly. You're doing great. We went to bed, but I lay awake for a long time, replaying my conversation with Paige in my head. There was something symbolic about her calling me at midnight, as if, like in a fairy tale, all her illusions that she could handle everything on her own without help were about to turn into pumpkins. In the morning, I woke up feeling like a new chapter in my life was beginning. I wasn't going to celebrate Paige's surrender or gloat that she got what she deserved, but I wasn't going back to the old pattern of being used and then discarded when I was no longer needed. Dorian was already up and making breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and toast filled the house. Good morning, he smiled when I walked into the kitchen. How did you sleep after that phone call last night? Surprisingly well, I said, reaching for the coffee pot. Somehow, I feel calm. That's because you did everything right, he said, placing a plate of omelet in front of me. You didn't refuse to help, but you didn't let yourself be manipulated. I hope so. I took a sip of coffee. I'll tell you how the meeting went tonight. I'll be waiting impatiently. He kissed me on the top of my head. Now I have to go. I promised to help Jim with his car. Jim was another neighbor of ours, a retired police officer. His old Ford was always breaking down, and Dorian, with his mechanical skills, often helped him out. Good luck, I smiled, and thanks for breakfast. Left alone, I decided to call Greta. I needed advice on how to build a new relationship with Paige and Finley so that everyone would be comfortable. So she finally broke down? Greta chuckled after hearing about my phone call. I told you this would happen. Don't say that, I frowned. She didn't break down. She just realized she needed help. After rejecting that very help and being rude to you, my daughter reminded me. But okay, I won't gloat. What are you going to do? Help, of course, but not like before. We'll make a schedule. Certain days when I'll pick up the kids from school and daycare, help with homework, plus weekends, as agreed. What about your plans? Greta's voice sounded worried. You've just started living for yourself. You've made friends, Dorian. I'm not going to give all that up, I assured her. That's why we need a clear schedule. 2 or 3 days a week I'll help with the kids, and the rest of the time is mine. If that works for you, it works for me, she said after a pause. Just remember, they crossed the line once. They might try again. I'll be on my guard this time, I promised, and I have you to remind me. Always. I could almost hear her smile through the phone. By the way, say hi to Dorian. I liked him. He's got guts. I will, I smiled back. It was important that Greta approved of my choice. When are you coming back? Maybe in August. I'll take a week off. If you're not too busy with the grandchildren, of course. I'll always have time for you, I assured her, and I think you should get to know the children better. They hardly remember Aunt Greta." "It's a deal," she laughed. "Now I have to run. The workday is in full swing." After talking to my daughter, I felt more confident. Strange, but I used to be the one who gave advice and support. Now it was as if we had switched roles. Greta had become my rock, my voice of reason. At 1 o'clock, I was at the cafe. Paige was 10 minutes late. She ran in breathless, her hair wet from the rain. "Sorry," she said, plopping down in the chair across from me. "The meeting ran late, and then there was this downpour." "No problem," I said, pushing the menu toward her. "I already ordered tea. Would you like anything else?" "No, just coffee." She waved her hand. "I don't have much time." The waitress took our order and left. We were left alone, and suddenly it felt awkward, as if neither of us knew how to start after yesterday's emotional conversation. "How are the kids?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Fine," she said, nervously fixing her hair. "Oliver finally sat down to do his homework today, and Hazel, well, she's still Hazel, indomitable." "She's just a very lively girl," I smiled, "with a strong character. That's good." "Maybe," Paige sighed. "But sometimes I feel like I just can't handle her energy. She constantly demands attention, constantly wants something, and I don't have the strength for it, especially when Finley is away." I nodded. I knew that feeling of exhaustion well, when it seems like you have no strength left, but the demands keep growing and growing. "What do you suggest?" Paige asked when the waitress brought her coffee. "What kind of schedule would work for you?" I took a small diary out of my bag and opened it to a blank page. "I can pick up the kids from school and daycare on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll be with them until you get home from work. And as before, they can stay with me on weekends, from Friday evening until Sunday." "Only 2 days a week?" She couldn't hide her disappointment. "Plus weekends," I reminded her. "That's 3 full days and 2 partial days, almost half the week." She bit her lip, considering the offer. "What if Finley is away on business? Like now, he won't be back until Wednesday." "In emergencies, we can work something out," I said. "But it has to be emergencies, not a regular thing." "Okay," she nodded, though it was clear she had hoped for more. "What about school breaks? Summer, for example?" I had thought about that too. "We can agree that the children will spend part of their vacations with me, a week or 2, but not the whole summer like before." "I understand," she said, lowering her eyes. "You have your own life now." There was a note in her voice that could have been interpreted as jealousy, or maybe resentment, as if she had only just realized that she could no longer count on me completely. "Yes, I have my own life," I confirmed, "but that doesn't mean I love the children any less or don't want to help you. It's just, everything has to be balanced." Paige lifted her head, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I was such a fool, Martha," she whispered. "Such an arrogant, conceited fool. I thought I knew better than anyone else how to raise children just because I had read a couple of books and articles on the internet." "All new parents go through that," I smiled gently. "Trust me, I thought I knew everything when Finley was little." "Really?" She looked at me incredulously. "But you're always so confident. You know what to do in every situation." "It comes with experience," I shrugged. "And with mistakes, too. I made plenty of them raising my kids." She wiped her eyes with a napkin. "You know what the worst part is? I didn't really believe all that nonsense about bad influences from older generations. It's just, I felt like the kids loved you more than they loved me. That you were a better mother than I could ever be, and I just got scared." Her confession touched me deeply. I remembered how I had once been jealous of Finley's grandmother, a smart, elegant woman who seemed to do everything perfectly. "Paige," I covered her hand with mine, "you're a wonderful mother, and the children love you immensely. It's just that you can do things with your grandmother that you can't do with your parents. That doesn't make your love any less important or any less strong." "Thank you," she squeezed my hand, "for not holding a grudge against me, for being willing to help after everything I said. We're a family," I replied simply. "Sometimes we fight, sometimes we don't understand each other, but in the end, we always come back to each other." We talked a little more, discussing the details of our new agreement, schedules, rules, exceptions, By the end of the conversation, the atmosphere between us had become noticeably warmer, more relaxed. It was as if the ice that had frozen our relationship for all these months had melted. "Finley will be happy," Paige said as we left the cafe. "He's been feeling terrible all this time for taking my side instead of yours." "I don't hold it against him," I assured her. "He was protecting his family. That's what Raymond and I always taught him." "Still," she shook her head, "he should have listened to you. We both should have." We said goodbye at the entrance to the cafe. Paige hugged me awkwardly, quickly but sincerely. "See you tomorrow then?" she asked. "Will you pick up the kids after school?" "See you tomorrow," I nodded. "I'll be at Oliver's school at 3. I walked home with a light heart. Something important had happened today. Not just a reconciliation or a new agreement about helping the kids. Paige and I had finally had a real conversation, heard each other. Perhaps for the first time in all the years we had known each other. I knew it wouldn't be smooth sailing. There would be difficulties, misunderstandings, and perhaps new conflicts. But now we had a foundation for something healthier, more respectful. And that was worth all the difficult weeks of loneliness and doubt. When I got home, the first thing I did was call Dorian to tell him how the meeting went. "I'm happy for you," he said after listening. "For all of you. Family is important." "Yes," I agreed, "but you're important to me too. And I'm not going to sacrifice our relationship for the sake of grandchildren." "I know," he said with a smile in his voice, "and I appreciate it. By the way, how about dinner tonight? I'll make that lasagna you liked so much last time." "I'd love to," I smiled into the phone. "I'll be waiting." After talking to Dorian, I decided to tidy up the children's room a little. My grandchildren were coming tomorrow, and I had to get everything ready. As I put away Hazel's toys and Oliver's books, I thought about how my life had changed in the last 2 months. From a woman who lived only for her grandchildren, I had become a person with my own interests, plans, and relationships. And yet I hadn't stopped loving my grandchildren or helping them. Perhaps that was the secret to wisdom. Not sacrificing yourself for others, but finding a balance between caring for your loved ones and caring for yourself. In the evening, Dorian arrived with ingredients for lasagna and a bottle of good wine. We cooked together, laughed, and told each other stories from the past. He talked about his sons, and I talked about Finley and Greta. Then we had dinner by candlelight, and it was so normal, so right. "To new beginnings," Dorian proposed, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed. We both knew that he wasn't just talking about my reconnection with my son's family. He was talking about us, about what was happening between us, about the feelings that were growing deeper every day. That night, lying next to him, I thought about tomorrow, about how I would return to the routine of helping the children with their school projects and homework. But now everything would be different, because I had changed, and Paige had changed too. We had both gone through something important and emerged from the ordeal a little wiser, a little stronger. The next evening, as I was putting Hazel to bed in her room at my house, she suddenly said, "Grandma, I'm glad you're going to pick us up from school again." "I'm glad too, sweetie," I smiled, tucking the blanket around her. "Mom said you had a fight with her, but then you made up," the girl continued. "Is that true?" I wondered how to respond. "We didn't exactly fight," I said finally. "We just couldn't agree on some things. But now we've sorted everything out." "Okay," she yawned. "Mom was sad all the time when you weren't here, and angry too." "It was hard for your mom." I stroked her head. "She has a lot on her mind." "I know." Hazel nodded with unexpected seriousness. "That's why I tried to behave myself. But sometimes I forgot." I smiled. At 6 years old, she sometimes showed surprising insight. "Everything will be fine now," I promised. "Now go to sleep. We have lots of fun things to do tomorrow." "Good night, Grandma." She closed her eyes. "Good night, sunshine." I left the room, leaving the door ajar. Hazel was afraid of the dark. In the living room, Oliver was engrossed in a book about space that I had bought him last week. "Grandma, do you know what a black hole is?" he asked, without looking up from the page. "Tell me." I sat down next to him, ready to listen to his enthusiastic explanation, and at that moment, I realized that despite all the difficulties and conflicts, I knew exactly where I belonged. It was here, next to my grandchildren, whom I loved with all my heart. But now I also knew that my life was not limited to this role alone, that I could be a grandmother, a friend, and a woman with her own dreams and desires. And perhaps that is the true wisdom of age, not clinging to the past or fearing change, but accepting new challenges with an open heart and self-confidence.